Okay, moving along. eh, You just watched the video and wrote down your reflections about the dangers of a single story. And one thing I want to add is in your reflection, I think it would be important to think about some examples in your life where possibly there was a single story told. And was it important to have the other sides told of that story? I can think of some examples of that. And so just be mindful of that. Okay. Now we're going to talk about ways to get to know your students. I know a lot of you work with our students in small group settings, and we are past the beginning of the year. But if you are doing some things with the students mid-year, you might just intentionally, I'm tripping on my tongue today, observe students as they play outdoors with classmates, as they interact with students or their families. Those are great ways to get to know your students. You could ask students to make an all about me poster and have them draw a picture of themselves, draw their likes, their dislikes, who's in their family, their favorite classes, their favorite activities. You can get to know a lot about a student through All About Me posters. The other thing you can do, or another, not an inclusive list here by any means, I'm just giving you some ideas. Ask respectful, open-ended questions about their likes and dislikes and what interests them to learn their story. Perhaps mid-year you get a student from another district or another country, and so you talk about their stories or ask them to bring pictures, ask families to send pictures with students about where they've come from or their interests. Get to know the students' families and culture to bridge the school home connection, which is so important. And I put together another training about surrounding literacy at one time. And one of the examples I found that a school suggested was asking families to choose their favorite childhood book. It could be one from American culture, could be one from another culture outside of America, and it could be a book in another language. And invite parents in for a family night where they share their favorite story and read aloud. And because of COVID, that might have to be a Zoom where a family member can read a story. And these differing families read stories from all different cultures and shared that with the community of the kids in the classrooms. And you should have seen how the response was that came out of that, and just how excited these families were to share what was meaningful to them, that was read to them possibly when they were young. And it doesn't even have to be a printed book. There are many cultures that stories are passed down from generation to generation. So somebody could come and share stories that are passed down, music that's passed down, the language, and share that. There could be family nights where you're having different dishes made and shared. I guess maybe not during COVID time, but there are so many ways that we can get to know our families and bridge the cultural gap so that everybody feels welcome in the community and cultures of our school. All right. Speaking of learning communities, when educators establish a welcoming environment that is consistently nurturing and a safe place, students are more likely to learn. Negative behavior is minimized by the positive environment. Rather than establish systems of reward and punishment, culturally responsive educators balance compassion with accountability when redirecting misbehavior. I know many of you use restorative justice in your schools, which is great. And it does focus on compassion and accountability. Negative behavior is minimized with a positive environment. Unfortunately, some of our kids may come to us from environments that aren't positive. And so, of course, we want to have that positive environment at school for them so they can see what that looks like. So right now, I want you to brainstorm what kind of behaviors get students into trouble. And on your paper, which I'm sure is full by now, I want you to write down, please, some behaviors that get students in trouble, whether it be in the classroom, on the playground, in small groups with you, possibly on the buses, in the lunchroom. Please write down some behaviors that get students into trouble. Please take a few moments and do that. Okay, now I want you to, once you have your list, so you can pause, please pause wherever you need to throughout this presentation. I should have said that earlier. Sort the behavior into safe and unsafe. So write safe on one side, unsafe on another. And then that list that you just made, start putting those under those categories. Which is the safe behaviors, but they still get a student in trouble, and then some unsafe. Take a few moments to do that. I know that students are most often in trouble for moving and talking. That bell today. And those are behaviors that are probably categorized under safe, right? But moving and talking are probably high on the list. Those are two behaviors that research has shown is required for students to learn. We must remember that students come from us from cultures with strong oral traditions, and teachers who allow students to move or show their learning in stories or art can support learning. We must also remember that different cultures have differing social norms. For example, sleeping in class in the US is seen as lazy or as a potential health concern. Something's going on, this child is not getting enough sleep. However, if you were from South Korea and Japan, napping during lessons is encouraged right in the middle of class. According to the Korea Times, almost 50% of students in Japan and about 30% in Korea of their students nap during class. Which, as a teacher, if I saw a student napping during my class, I would think, oh my goodness, I better step it up. My lesson's boring, or they didn't sleep. They were up all night for some reason. So definitely there can be some cultural norms with behavior that we see in the classroom. What elements of a student's culture might impact their behavior? So now I want you to think about that. And think about what's going on below the student's waterline of visibility that might be causing this. And you can add that to your paper that you have multiple things written on during today. So again, as I said, negative behavior is minimized by positive environment. So when you're working with students, how might you be able to change the environment to change the student's behavior without punishment? What needs to be minimized or added maybe more movement in the lessons that you're doing, or maybe allowing a student to work with a partner or a small group is how they are used to learning. And so that is going to maximize good behavior in the classroom and minimize the misbehavior or off task behavior. So I want you to think about times in the class or things that you have encountered and what you can do to make some positive change if needed. And go ahead and add that to your paper. Again, I hope you have paused throughout this to make allowances for the things that I've asked you to answer or write down or draw. I know it's quite a bit today, and this, like I said, is going to be 2 different days training, but I want to make sure that I cover what the Paraeducator Board is asking that we cover throughout this training. All right. Now I would like to go to, you all are the front line with our students. You work with them day in, day out. You are sometimes just a great lifeline between a teacher and a student because of the relationships you get to form in small groups with students. And I know that you are many, many times their champion. And this video is called Every Child Needs a Champion. And I am going to use this video today to round out our training. So I'm going to have you watch this video, and then I am going to ask you some questions. And then I think we'll probably be at the end of our time for this week with our pauses in the training. But this is Every Child Needs a Champion by Rita Pearson. And I think it's impactful, and what she has to say is so heartwarming.
I have spent my entire life either at the schoolhouse, on the way to the schoolhouse, or talking about what happens in the schoolhouse. Both my parents were educators. My maternal grandparents were educators. And for the past 40 years, I've done the same thing. And so needless to say, over those years, I've had a chance to look at education reform from a lot of perspectives. Some of those reforms have been good. Some of them have been not so good. And we know why kids drop out. We know why kids don't learn. It's either poverty, low attendance, negative peer influences. We know why. But one of the things that we never discuss, or we rarely discuss, is the value and importance of human connection. Relationships. James Comer says that no significant learning can occur without a significant relationship. George Washington Carver says all learning is understanding relationships. Everyone in this room has been affected by a teacher or an adult. For years, I have watched people teach. I have looked at the best, and I've looked at some of the worst. A colleague said to me one time, they don't pay me to like the kids. They pay me to teach a lesson. The kids should learn it. I should teach it. They should learn it. Case closed. Well, I said to her, you know, kids don't learn from people they don't like. She said, that's just a bunch of hooey. And I said to her, well, your year is going to be long and arduous, dear. Needless to say, it was. Some people think that you can either have it in you to build a relationship or you don't. I think Stephen Covey had the right idea. He said you ought to just throw in a few simple things. like seeking first to understand as opposed to being understood. Simple things like apologizing. You ever thought about that? Tell a kid you're sorry, they're in shock. I taught a lesson once on ratios. I'm not real good with math, but I was working on it. And I got back and looked at that teacher edition. I taught the whole lesson wrong. So I came back to class the next day and I said, look, guys, I need to apologize. I taught the whole lesson wrong. I'm so sorry. I said, that's okay, Miss Pearson. You were so excited. We just let you go. I have had classes that were so low, so academically deficient that I cried. I wondered, how am I going to take this group in 9 months from where they are to where they need to be? And it was difficult. It was awfully hard. How do I raise the self-esteem of a child and his academic achievement at the same time? One year I came up with a bright idea. I told all my students, you were chosen to be in my class because I am the best teacher and you are the best students. They put us all together so we could show everybody else how to do it. One of the students said, really? I said, really? We have to show the other classes how to do it. So when we walk down the hall, people will notice us. So you can't make noise. You just have to strut. And I gave them a saying to say, I am somebody. I was somebody when I came. I'll be a better somebody when I leave. I am powerful and I am strong. I deserve the education that I get here. I have things to do, people to impress, and places to go. And they said, yeah. You say it long enough, it starts to be a part of you. And so I gave a quiz, 20 questions. Student missed 18. I put a +2 on this paper and a big smiley face. He said, Miss Pearson, is this an F? I said, yes. He said, then why'd you put a smiley face? I said, because you on the roll. You got 2 right, you didn't miss them all. I said, and when we review this, won't you do better? He said, yes, ma'am, I can do better. You see, -18 sucks all the life out of you. +2 said, I ain't all bad. For years, I watched my mother take the time at recess to review, go on home visits in the afternoon, buy combs and brushes and peanut butter and crackers to put in her desk drawer for kids that needed to eat, and a washcloth and some soap for the kids who didn't smell so good. See, it's hard to teach kids who stink. And kids can be cruel. And so she kept those things in her desk, and years later, after she retired, I watched some of those same kids come through and say to her, you know, Miss Walker, you made a difference in my life. You made it work for me. You made me feel like I was somebody when I knew at the bottom I wasn't. And I want you to just see what I've become. And when my mama died 2 years ago at 92, there were so many former students at her funeral. It brought tears to my eyes, not because she was gone, but because she left a legacy of relationships that could never disappear. Can we stand to have more relationships? Absolutely. Will you like all your children? Of course not. And you know your toughest kids are never absent. Never. You won't like them all, and the tough ones show up for a reason. It's the connection. It's the relationships. And while you won't like them all, the key is they can never, ever know. So teachers become great actors and great actresses, and we come to work when we don't feel like it, and we listen to policy that doesn't make sense, and we teach anyway. We teach anyway because that's what we do. Teaching and learning should bring joy. How powerful would our world be if we had kids who were not afraid to take risks, who were not afraid to think, and who had a champion? Every child deserves a champion, an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insist that they become the best that they can possibly be. Is this job tough? You betcha. Oh God, you betcha. But it is not impossible. We can do this. We're educators. We're born to make a difference. Thank you so much.
I absolutely love her energy. Now that you've watched that video, how do you demonstrate care and respect for students in the classroom? And who decides what it means to show care and respect? The culture of students shapes what caring and respect looks like. Educators have to look to the community to know how to define respect. So having that dialogue with students, what does it look like? What does it sound like? What do we, if somebody saw us, what is that interaction that they would see us showing respect? And these are just some ways that you can take the knowledge of communities and turn it into actionables. So here are some examples of the respect and caring in action. Small group jobs, giving students ownership and responsibility can make them feel a sense of caring and respecting in their learning communities. They have ownership in the process. They become agents in their own learning and agents in the responsibility that they have to learn. The second thing could be educator supported conflict resolution. If you have students that have conflict, you use conflict resolution to help them figure out what's going on and figure out if maybe there's just a misunderstanding with cultural backgrounds, linguistic background. Maybe they weren't being disrespectful when they didn't look at somebody when they were talking to them. Perhaps their culture, it's not respectful to look at somebody. So figuring out and talking about and communicating, because sometimes conflict is just misunderstanding. And then positive affirmations, making sure that our students know that we care, that we can be their champion, that we are going to be that positive person in their life. I hope that today's training was interesting to you. I apologize when I've stumbled over my tongue today and the ums that I have added to this presentation. Next time, we are going to cover the relevant curriculum, student-centered instruction, and social justice. But for today, we are going to stop here. And I just hope you have a fantastic Wednesday. Know that you are going to keep all of your information together that you've taken notes on, and we will do a reflection piece at the end of the next training, the second part of this, that you will turn into me. But all of this stuff that you have from today, your iceberg, your reflection questions from teachingtolerance.org, all of that, you're just going to keep together, and then you can bring it to the next time you have a late start. Have an amazing Wednesday, and please call me or not call me, because I'm not in my office as much as I would need to be to answer the phone. So email me at fester, FESTAR, at WVSD208.org if you have any questions. Have an amazing day.